Hey guys, there have been some questions about how we're to do these 3D groups as far as working through the material. First thing you need to remember is that the main purpose of getting together in these groups is to build relationships. We're trying to strengthen the household of Harvest. And so really the most important thing is the relationships within the group and just everybody getting to have a say and everybody having input and just experiencing the diversity that's amongst people. Secondly, part of being a missional church or a missional person is that we're able to communicate the gospel of Jesus Christ clearly to those with whom we come into contact and whenever we have an opportunity to do so. So, keeping that in mind, the last thing we want to do when we get together is sit down and read the material to the group. That's not the purpose in this at all. The purpose is to learn to tell the story, beginning in Genesis all the way up through the end. And so that's why we're using this material, because everybody can tell the story in their own way. That's why we want everyone in the group to take turns leading the story. Okay, so if I were leading a group, we'll do, say, week 2, the story of Cain and Abel. If I were happening to lead that night, the way I would begin is by just kind of painting the picture of where we've been. Last week, of course, or the last time we met and talked together, we talked about creation, how God created angels, and they were cast from His presence because of sin. And then we talked about the creation of the world and how God created man and woman in His image with His essential nature, and they chose to sin, and because God cannot abide with sin and rebellion, they were separated from Him and banished from the garden. This week we're just going to talk about the story of a couple of their sons to start with, Cain and Abel. And the thing that we really want to keep in mind as we talk about these stories tonight is that God looks at the heart, and every human being makes the choice to sin. It's not that we don't have a choice, and that God has created us and He's commanded us to be fruitful and to multiply, and that He's our source of grace and mercy. And these are the things to keep in mind as we tell these stories, because this is the point that we want to be able to share with people as we share this part of the gospel message. So basically what I would do is just start by telling the story of Cain and Abel. After Adam and Eve left the garden, Cain and Abel were born to them. Cain was first, Abel was second. Cain was the farmer. He's the one that tilled the land and harvested and produced, and Abel was a shepherd. Well, it says that in the scriptures that at one time, when it was harvest time, Cain brought part of his produce and offered him as a sacrifice to God. And Abel brought the best of his flock and offered it as a sacrifice to God. God accepted Abel's sacrifice, but rejected Cain's, and that made Cain very angry. So God went to him and asked a question. Why are you so angry? Why do you look so down? It's showing in your face. What's going on? Then He confronted him and said, you'll be accepted too if you offer an acceptable sacrifice. You see, God was looking at his heart, and He saw what was in the heart. It wasn't just about what was offered. It was about the heart. Well, obviously Cain stayed angry. Later on, he suggested to his brother Abel that they go to the fields together, and when they did, we know that Cain killed Abel. God came to Cain later on and asked the question again. And that's something I noticed when I was reading through this, is how God asked the question rather than confronting them head on. But God asked the question again. He said, where's your brother? And we all know what that answer that Cain gave. Am I my brother's keeper? And God said to Cain, your brother's blood cries out from the ground to me. And He banished Cain from again. And one of his punishment was that which he did well, which he, as a farmer, crops would never grow for him again. So he was banished to a life of roaming across the earth. He was concerned, of course, that not being able to do that and being separated from his family, that somebody would kill him. And God assured him in his mercy that he put a mark on him and nobody would be able to lay a hand on Cain, which I thought was kind of ironic because Cain deserved death because he caused the death of Abel, but God was still merciful. We're seeing the gospel in this, how man deserves death, and yet we see the mercy of God. So after I've told the story like that, basically what I would do is just kind of have these questions on my lap, and I would just ask the ones that I thought were relevant to the group that night. You don't have to cover everything. Remember, the sole purpose is learning to relate to one another, building a relationship. We want people to add to our story as we tell, hey, Maury, you forgot this part of it, or, this is the part that stands out to me. We want to get a dialogue going because the more people get involved, the more they learn to tell the story as well. And so we would just ask some of these questions. These questions are really good. They come with some helpful leading questions, or they come with some answers so that you can kind of nudge people in the right direction as far as the theme of what we're trying to learn through these stories. Well, I hope this helped.